Ivan, very good morning, very good afternoon. So it's nice to have you all in this Sunday morning for another great session by Glenmore Global Resources. Some of you, it's a good afternoon. So a warm welcome to all of you. As a formality, before we begin the session, let me give a brief intro to the Glenmore Global Resources. Glenmore is a Sri Lankan organization with two strategic partnerships with two international giants, Harrison's Assessments and Workplace Options. Harrison's Assessment is a well-known psychometric assessment provider, and it is used in 61 countries in 38 languages and over 2.5 million people assessed. The other global partner is Workplace Options, WPO USA. WPO is the world's largest privately owned and independent provider of integrated employee well-being solutions. It's 65 million employees, 100,000 organizations in over 200 countries and territories across the globe, including Sri Lanka. Glenmore provides end-to-end HR solutions. They are into training for all categories, from the factory floor associate to the topmost leadership person, which includes outward bound trainings or OBTs. If your organization needs some executive coaching or transition coaching, they can help you with that. Glenmore has a team of qualified counselors who can help your employees in all three languages. Could be in Sinhala, could be in English or Tamil. If you want to know how your employees think about your leadership, or if you want to understand the pulse of your employees, Glenmore can help you with a leadership survey or a climate survey. Glenmore masters this. Apart from those services, if you need some legal support in relation to labor-related matters, or to prepare a kind of a policy procedure manual for your organization, or if you want to assess your company's degree of labor compliance, Glenmore has a well-qualified and experienced legal and labor professionals. Glenmore's business model is different to a traditional consulting organization. They assemble the right resources with the right expertise locally or globally, and then deliver sustainable solutions that fit the client organization's need and budget. Through their partnerships with a wider, well-connected network, Glenmore is able to source you the ideal resource person for a comparatively lower cost than what you would pay them individually. Once they conduct a training program, they provide a 6 months to 1 year post-training support with the client free of charge. This is a value addition given to all the Glenmore clients. Glenmore, with its international partnerships, work with small startups to MNCs. So colleagues, today's session is Take the Mystery Out of Human Capital by Jimmy Ong. This is the 6th webinar Glenmore conducts for you. If you have any questions, please use the chat box below as we mute the microphones, or you can text to 0768 031 031. I'll read it again, 0094, that's the country code, and then 768 031 031. Or you can mail to info@glenmore.lk, info@glenmore.lk as well. We are in a challenging time than ever before. Managing the talent in an optimum manner is extremely crucial for any organization. I'm sure you all would agree with me. Therefore, we want to talk to a well-reputed international expert this time to get his views and his advice for you. He is Jimmy Ong. He is a principal consultant and solutions director of Omniweave Consulting Malaysia. Jimmy comes from a varied background of exciting experiences where he gains skills and qualifications in managing and leading in customer service areas, business and organizational planning, resource management, designing and delivering effective learning solutions. Jimmy currently leads in HR strategy and solutions in the areas of leadership development, human capital development, learning, performance, talent and competency management, then competency-based training need analysis, succession and career management. Jimmy has both an extensive national and international exposure with more than 20 years in human capital performance and growth. Further, He's a chartered member of CIPD UK. Hi, Jimmy. Very good afternoon. Welcome to the session. It's a privilege to have you here.
Thank you so
Jimmy,
much. And good morning, I have to say to all of you in Sri Lanka.
Sri Lankan.
And of course, it is now 12:30 p.m. here in Kuala Lumpur,
Yeah.
Malaysia. Prabhash, thank you for the introduction.
Jimmy, so the world is so complicated now, moving very fast. And with this COVID-19 pandemic situation, it has become unpredictable. If I'm a business leader, I'm a head of HR, the level of talent pool I have is very crucial. So, what should be my people strategy, Jimmy? Shall we start the discussion from here?
Absolutely. Thank you, Prabhash. You raised a good point. I think all of us are in uncharted territories, if I could say. Not just a particular country or industry, the entire world is. Every country is facing its own challenges, and it's certainly a VUCA world, isn't it, Prabhash?
Yes.
In all these changes that we are seeing, in all the interruptions we are seeing, businesses are changing their business model, operating model. At the bottom of that, it is still the people that's behind each and every business. It is still the human resource, the human capital, the talents, the hard work that we have gone through to pick all those people within our own industry for our business, for our companies. So it is still all about that. It is something that we can't let go of. I think it is even more crucial now. What do we do with the people that we have now, Prabhash? So
Yes.
with this, I'd like to share with all of you, take us through some really interesting insights of what we potentially can do. What are some of the different actions we can think about and take on and exploit in each and every one of our own industry? We have our own challenges for sure, but when it comes down to leading people, leading organization, there are still some very basic nuts and bolts. I think all of us continuously or constantly would need to be reminded of, and what else can we do? So with that, fear and self-doubt has always been the greatest enemies of human potential. I think this rings true. Sometimes it is the fear of knowing the unknown. It is the fear of finding out about our employee. It's the fear of peeling the next layer in this onion, that what's going to be the next layer. But as we get through this, as we have the right tools and approaches and the right intent and objective, I think importantly, you'll be pleasantly surprised. There's so much more we can leverage on as we drive through this world of uncertainties today. So fear, self-doubt have always been the greatest enemies of human potential. So to get different results, we need different actions. And some of us might say, hey, we have tried everything. We've done this, we've done that. We've tried everything in the books that we could get our hands on. But you know what? Sometimes it's about taking another step back and re-look at this. Today, the landscape is different. Benchmarks are thrown out the windows, right? There's no benchmarks on the COVID world. There's no benchmark on what we're going through. Everyone is learning as we're getting through this step. All said and done, I think there are some very strong and sound methodology that we can actually think about and leverage on. Yeah. So what can we do that's different? I think that's the question we need to ask ourselves. Be not afraid of the unknowns. A changing world. Prabhash has said that, the vodka world, now that everything is coming and is disrupted, and COVID has brought this whole new environment to us. What has changed and what is still changing? In fact, that's the scary part. It is changing as we speak. It is just amazing with what's going on to the USA today, right? There's so much unforeseen disruption that's coming through, and the impact is tremendous in every part of the world. Bottom line, how are our employees performing? And for those of us who are still helming and bring along a large team of people with us, still trying to stay afloat the line of business, the question is, how are our people performing? Are they doing the same? Are they able to do the same? I think the bigger question is, are they able to do different? So, how are you managing output? That's a very big question for all of us, be it your HR manager, be it a line manager, a marketing manager, a legal manager. We are all managing an output, and that's through our people. So the big question is, are you getting the best out of them? So it is huge as a question that it kind of lingers on, right? That's such a big question that we think about now, each and every hour. So what drives optimum performance? So it comes back down to that. What drives that? So the question to the audience here, to our guest here today, Prabhash, is what are possible components of performance? You can drop your thoughts in a chat box as you think about this. What drives that optimal performance that we're looking for? What brings that out that is hindering it? What's stopping it? That's something that we want to think about. In my world, what we think about a lot when we lead a team of people, and we do a lot of consulting work for our clients, couple areas that we always kind of focus on. And the question that we bring up and we ask our clients when we partner with them is, yeah, it looks like motivation is a very important area. Collaboration is huge. Ownership, ultimate ownership of processes, activities, actions, projects, items that's given to them. These are potential areas that is going to get us to optimal performance, right? There could be other things, I think, at your end, and yet you could be facing in your own business today. And we talk a lot about this. People talk about, how do I motivate my team? I think my teams are motivated. I think they work well as a team. I see them chatting. I see them doing stuff together. I see them taking responsibility. This is really exciting, right? I think the more experienced managers and leaders, they kind of get a sense on it. They can put their hands, their fingers on the pulse of it. But how do you really know that people are motivated? And it is something as similar to even engagement. We kind of think that our people are engaged, but how well do you know that they are that engaged that they will drive discretionary effort? And we know that discretionary effort leads to performance. There's a lot of questions behind that. And it's just really interesting if you take a step back and think about it. So I ask you to ask yourselves, how clear are you that your people are thoroughly motivated today? Things have really shifted. There's so much uncertainties. There's so much worries, be it professional, in the personal space. There's so much of that that's now in play. How well are they collaborating? I think that's a huge question. Collaboration always brings about greater performance. It is a sum of all parts that makes it a greater whole. One does not work on their own, but ultimately really as a larger team. So that's really interesting. Kind of think about that. What drives that performance? What drives that optimal performance? Now, as leaders, as people, we take a step back in how do you bring about someone onto your team? There's always that whole process is either you recruit externally, either you bring someone in from a different division, or someone has been transferred over. That's the employee life cycle we see. And it is a continuous life cycle, right? They come into the role, they grow into the role, they develop in that whole journey, they get a lot of performance, coaching, mentoring, whatever coaching they require, and they grow into that role. And ultimately, we hope that they are performing and they are giving the best in that role that fitted in. So the question is, how do they continuously grow in this life cycle? And how do they then contribute to development? And hence comes about, what about technology? Is there an opportunity for me to leverage on something like assessment technology? So let's look at the employee life cycle. While it is very much a HR jargon, we talk a lot about it, but it's really about the people we bring on board with us. And what are the actions behind these people that we deploy with to ensure that they are really able to give the best? So the tactical measures that should be at the forefront of a company's talent strategy, it should be at your forefront when you bring someone in. So while we have a target, while we have a bottom line to focus on, while we have a KPI to achieve, but the question should always be, equally important is, what's your company's talent strategy? How are you ensuring them that they are on the right journey with you and you're getting the best out of your employee? So the life cycle is very similar, regardless where you are, regardless which country, which industry you're in. It's all about selecting the people, be it external, internal. You have them coming on board. Then you grow them, you develop them, you talent manage them, and you find ways, after all the hard work of months of hard work, we retain them, right? So this goes on, it goes on in the whole cycle, and hence we call it employee life cycle, to a point where they exit the organization. So that doesn't stop until the separation, the exit takes place. So this is where it is. So it starts from all here, right? Optimal performance starts from the point of when someone comes into this life cycle. The selection. How do you actually bring in the right person for the job you want to fill? So, right person, right fit, right job. So that's always a question we ask. Traditionally, we get HR to do the recruitment or the sourcing of candidates. Traditionally, we get our talent acquisition people to make the posting and get the right people in. And as experienced managers like yourselves out there, you really then go through your interview process, and you might have a very sophisticated and very mature process. Fantastic. And of course, we all grow with this. So the selection process is the start of this optimal performance. How do you get the best of your employees? And once they get on board, the next crucial point, in fact, a very important point here is, what is your onboarding process? So it's not just welcoming someone on the first day. It's not just saying this is your desk and this is your files and this is your computer ID. It's the entire onboarding process that is going to set them on the right trajectory. And that is crucial. That's where the branding, the culture, the whole mission and vision, the clarity of what this business does takes place. And don't forget this step, I would strongly say. Many organizations feel that this is purely a 1 hour orientation that is completed, is a checkbox. It is a very, very important setup. And as we complete this onboarding process, on your mind too, and you're thinking, hey, is it 1 day, 1 week? I've seen onboarding programs going on for 6 months. And that's how serious some organizations are with their onboarding process. And as you get along that whole journey, this comes the development part. The continuous development right from the start must be planted. The whole intent of growing and getting the best of your employee needs to start right from the beginning. How do you make an athlete an Olympian? It takes years and months and days of training, isn't it? Right from the start. So this is exactly where it is. What do you get out from the employee is what you put into it. So it's not just about buying them in, bring them into the organization with the skills they have. It's also equally the same amount of your responsibility and effort put into it. So that's ultimately also a very important part of this life cycle. Then comes, after all your hard work, the whole year of work with this person, be it a promotional role, promoted in a new position or a new employee, is now the question of retaining. How do you ensure that your return of time and investment is going to pay off? So this is the whole life cycle that we talk about until the point they leave, and hopefully we like the employee to stay as long as they can with you until the point of exit where it is the retirement, right? So this is really getting the best out of each and every employee in your team. So very important. And you think about it, you ask yourself, do you have this process articulated in your organization, right? In pursuit of business, in pursuit of financial status, objectives, and achievements, in pursuit of all this, the question is, do you have this as part of your business strategy? So what about technology and analytics? Does it help us in this whole life cycle? Of course, I think the answer is clearly yes. I think more so today in this uncertain world, I think we would want to ensure that every action we take, it is as precise, or at least it minimizes any ambiguity that we may have. I think that's going to be important. Decisions are not going to be just very, you're going to fight with me, I'm going to fight with you, right? I think Prabhash understands this. I mean, HR, we have a suite of rules and policies, and sometimes we feel that we can execute these rules and policies anytime. But this is where it is. You need to think about it. Every action we take as leaders, as people, as organizations, there will be repercussions. So every action we take, I think it is important that actions are thought about. If it's got to do with someone's skills and capability, what are the analytics behind it? How have you made that decision? I think that's going to be critical. When it comes to something like technology, technology is fantastic. I think everyone talks about it. Everyone relies on technology. Everyone uses technology today. At times, I think as simple as a simple connection, right? Using Zoom, for example, it could be the problem, right? Or sometimes it's simple as, hey, we've got the data. The data tells us so. That's for, let's do this. We could be too quick to jumping into the solution just because we have the data. So it's also something that we need to think about. Technology is powerful, but it can also be a double-edged sword. So managing employees, and I think this is where we get caught sometimes. Hey, they were doing so well last year. He was doing so well last year. So I think I can go ahead with this promotion. So this is where we need to think about it just a little bit more. So last year's data, past information is fantastic, it's historical. I think it's also important to think about what's expected down the road, what's expected in the future. Does the last previous year's data, historical data, provide enough insight to what we want in the future, right? So that's important. Technology is most effective, absolutely, when it is not the focus. It should be a very complementary solution. It should be a part of your solution. It should be something that supports and be the pillar in your solution. It should not be in the forefront of everything, because if you don't do that right, you may not get the right insights. And last but not least, we as leaders, we need to change and find champions and not just be managers. So it should be as important as how can I coach you? Okay, great. So really then it comes down to this statement here: understanding an employee's perspective can really go a long way towards increasing productivity. Not just that, right? So it is just overall performance and output, and just really bring in the level of motivation, collaboration, and driving the output that you want to see. Above all, I think there's a lot of happiness and satisfaction and engagement with each and every individual. This is where we say that this leads to optimal performance. The hierarchy of optimal performance. So I've kind of talked about it in the beginning. We talked about performance, what drives performance, what brings about performance. In OmniView, we believe that optimal performance, together with the whole life cycle, it is something that is very important to think about, and it starts right from the entry point of each and every individual, and collectively as a team, that's where they deliver the best for you. For us, ultimate job fit is crucial. It's pointless talking about growing a talent. It's pointless talking about job performance. It's pointless talking about KPIs and goals and targets when we're having some troubles with someone sitting in the job. I think traditionally, we always say that if someone doesn't perform, we call in HR and say, okay, let's just get Jimmy out, put him under performance watch because he doesn't seem to be performing. So I think the question that we should be asking is, has the job changed? Has the role changed? When Jimmy was brought in, was the intent different? Were the skill sets measured differently? Has something changed now? Has something shifted? Has those skill sets shifted that Jimmy needs to be coached and developed in? So I think that's very crucial, right? To think about, where's the fit today? The fit was great last year, but now in a new world, the fit could be different. So how do we find out where the fit is today? The next one that we're going to think about, each and every one of us have very, very personal values. We bring that with us. What we believe in, that our own personal cause that we have, our behavioral tendencies, that's very much ingrained in each and every one of us. That has a serious impact to what we do today, right? Someone who is very warm, empathetic, and has a huge cause motivation towards societal causes, and if they are in a role that doesn't quite align with some of their personal values, they can perform, they will perform, but how long do they sustain their motivation in that kind of role? So that is also an interesting perspective that we look at, right? Sometimes we say, hey, smart chap, experience ticked off, skill sets ticked off, but something is not quite right with this chap, right? We can't quite figure it out. So this is another perspective we need to think about. How do we find out that Jimmy has the right personal values when he steps into this organization? Does his values align with the organization's value? The paradoxical balances, I think this is always something interesting. We bring with us, if you like to put it simply, very different traits. We have different behaviors with us. And I'm mindful about this because it's not about one's personality. It is about the values we bring in, the traits that we carry. Some people that we see, they are somehow a little bit more detailed, right? And that's how we look for people in different roles. We hire people. Get me someone who is a little bit more precise. I want someone who is very good with customer service. I want someone who thinks very well. I want someone who is very mindful. And what we are talking about, these are essentially traits or behaviors of that person. I need those kind of behaviors and traits because the job requires it. So these are important. And do they have enough balances that they bring with them so that they will bring the best to the job and produce great outcomes, right? Ultimately, in this hierarchy is about expectations. Great job, great company, pays me well, but somehow I'm not connecting with the culture of the organization. And that is going to be your icing to the cake. If things are not connecting from that perspective, if the culture doesn't fit, if my drivers, my engagement drivers are not met, that is going to ultimately, in fact, have a negative impact to performance outcome. Okay, so that's our perspective of the hierarchy of optimal performance. Important now, I hope you get to see now, how can some of these things really provide you to a greater insight to driving greater outcomes for your business and with your people ultimately, right? So, does he have the right potential? I think that's the question we ask. And wow, I hope this visual brings a lot of impact to each and every one of us. Each time you look at one of our employees and each time you look at one of our top performers and we ask, does he have the right potential to be my next leader? Does he have the right potential to be the next customer service consultant? Should I be focusing on this person? Or as simple as, should I be hiring this person? Isn't it? And it's a huge question. And as I say, some of you are great hiring managers. We don't discount that. We have years of experience in getting the right people. But what would be even greater if we have the capability to find out some additional insights to the person we want to grow and drive great performance. So how can you find out? I think that's really interesting, right? Earlier we said to get different results, we need different actions. Some of you will also think, hey, I've tried everything, I've done everything. What else can we do? So the question to each and every one of you is, have you really thought of every action? Could it be something as simple as a solution that could be in front of you, or something that's totally out of the box? I think that is really interesting, right? So let me just show you how this business, how this organization has really taken a simple action of finding the right person for the right job. It's just different, right? It is so out of the box for me. Traditionally, when you hire for someone, yeah, we could be quite creative in our job ads. We can be quite creative in the way we get onto our media platform. We can be quite creative in spreading the words, in getting our candidates in. But have we thought about this specific action? So let's just watch this video clip quickly and see what this person has done, what this organization has done. Great. So there you go.
Ora viva! Olá, Pedro.
Tudo bem, Pedro?
Tudo ótimo. Tem que pôr o cinto, não é?
Convém.
Tem que ter o cinto?
Hã?
Tem que ter o cinto?
Sim.
Está bem.
Sempre.
Ok, sempre
Na
cinto.
carro, sempre cinto.
Seatbelt?
Yes. ¿Estás pronto para la entrevista?
Sí.
Pronto.
¿Estás pronto? La entrevista.
Not really.
Yeah. It's my birthday and I have a party tonight, okay?
Okay, so welcome to our office. So let's just start the interview.
Okay, let's starting. Oh yeah.
Why did you apply to this interview?
Okay. I forget the question.
Why should we hire you?
I can't answer.
How do you migrate a database without downtime?
Well, very easy. It's just putting another one.
And how do you scale servers on demand?
You have a very great drivers and cars.
Holy shit.
I don't think I can tell.
And it's really...
I think I cannot have any answer. Oh my god. Oh, this was so crazy. Oh, I enjoyed it a lot. Thank you so much. Oh my god. Thank you. You are insane, man. You are crazy.
I hope you guys enjoy that. Isn't this really interesting, right? I know the screen is blank right now. That's okay because the video just ended. So isn't this interesting? You would think that, okay, someone's got in the car, maybe he's applying for a job as a driver or a mechanic, right? They were developers. They were put into an interview that it was not testing for their technical or database technology or experience and skills and capability. If you think about it, they were being tested for their thinking capability under duress. How good is that, isn't it? How good is that to test that? Are you able to think under stress? Wow, that is like totally out of the box kind of interview, isn't it? So this is where we say that try something different. The technical skills, the experience, the certificates, you can get all that is given. But it is questions like this when you're doing interviews, Jimmy, tell me, how good are you in a stressful situation? What would you do? Right? This is all based on hypothetical, if not, give me a situation. How good it is that you're actually putting someone in an actual stressful situation and test how they react. Wonderful, isn't it? Yeah. So this is why it is. It's about taking a whole different set of actions to get to where you want to get back to getting the right candidate. That doesn't change, but it's how you approach it. Yeah. So we're coming towards the end of the presentation, but I'm seeing some questions coming up already in the chat group, and I'd like to address that before we get onto the longer set of questions that Prabhash has shared with me earlier. So how does a hierarchy of performance link to engagement? I'm glad you asked me this. If I could take you guys back to this slide. This is really interesting. It is not the only piece for hierarchy of optimal performance. It is a very important piece. Employee engagement. No matter how skilled and no matter how smart and how qualified employee is, it's been proven that it is employee engagement that's going to make a huge difference in your job performance, right? It is actually an effort that's not going to show any results if your team is not engaged collectively, if your individual employee is not engaged. It's proven the more engaged they are, every performance output, it is above what's expected. It is what we call the discretionary effort. So that is important. So don't forget, while you're looking for the best fit, the smartest, the most qualified, the question is, how are you engaging that employee? That is going to be the icing to the cake. Yeah, thank you for that question. Someone has also asked, can you explain the paradoxical balances? Of course, that is something that we love to talk about all the time. I think it's just very short and straightforward here, but I'll do what I can. I think in the upcoming seminars, we can have a little bit more about that. Paradoxical balances are where we put traits together. In the Harrison assessment space, we have 12 paradox graphs. Within those paradox graphs, there are 12 pairs of traits and 24 traits. Traits don't work on their own in silo. We all bring with us very unique set of traits. And some traits are what we call paradoxical pairs. Let me give you an example. An analytical trait is paired up with the other paradoxical pair of intuitive. So we always say that it's great to have an analytical approach to decision, to making of decisions. But at the same time, if you're equally balanced in having an intuitive trait, your ability to make that decision becomes more effective. It becomes sharper and you're able to execute that at any one time. Now, the question is, does that mean that if I have a stronger trait and a lower in another trait, does that give me a challenge? What's interesting with our paradoxical balance is, depending on the job and the role you're in, everyone brings with them some high value paradoxical balances, and one that is not in a proper balance does not necessarily mean that you are a non-performer. In fact, it could mean that you could be even a better performer in a specific role because the context requires you to be that. Okay, all right. So that's the paradoxical performance, the parallel balance explanation there. Okay, all right. Excellent. Love those questions. So let me just then take you guys right to the part where I think it gets really exciting, and I'm gonna pass this back to Prabhash. Prabhash, it's all back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Jimmy. Thank you so much. So we have, I think, a lot of questions that we have received through mails during the registration process. So question, yeah, the first question that's from Naduni. Thank you, Naduni Madhvika. So what is the role of augmented reality in the field of human resources management? What is the role of augmented reality in the field of human resource management?
Prabhash, when I saw this first question, I almost fell off my chair because that's a huge question, right? It is a big question. And of course, augmented reality, I think it is important for me to at least explain augmented reality and virtual reality. Of course, virtual reality is something that is, very simply put, it is not real and is created, and it is a simulation of something that doesn't exist. Augmented reality is, of course, right, it brings in some real case scenarios, and it is almost real to that extent. And how it is being applied, I think you can see that being applied, a lot of it in the manufacturing space, in the military training space, in engineering design, you see robotics, you see a lot of that that's happening, especially also in the medical world today. So that has really benefited, I think, many industries across. Now, what about HR, right? Of course, I think the first thing that comes to mind is augmented reality is very expensive, extremely high investment approach to either you're looking at how do you enhance performance, capability, right down to doing interviews and all that. Expensive way to go. Can it be done? Absolutely. I think what I'm starting to see that how augmented reality is put in place for employee training and onboarding. That has been pretty amazing, right? As simple as, I think, augmented reality, as simple as simulating a system training. So you're almost in the same space that in that system, you feel and you actually go through the whole process of registering someone for an application, for a product, applying for a service, right? Will it work? Absolutely. I think we don't say no to something that is complex and as high in terms of a solution architect. It takes a lot of time, and you know that it is hard. It's very difficult to simulate a lot of possible employee people scenarios. So if you're in an organization where you're at that level, especially if you're in a tech industry, by all means, I think do explore how technology can expedite, can deepen, can infuse that knowledge to be more effective. Absolutely go with that. But I think many organizations today may not have the capacity to do that, right? But it does not put you in a worse off scenario. Okay, so yeah, it's an out-of-box approach, definitely, Prabhash.
Thanks, Jimmy. Yeah, question we received from Kavinda. How do we exactly find the right talent for a position using psychometric testing?
Okay. Love this question. I think it is a question that is in our space. It is still, I think, years and years and years of challenge of always finding the right person for the right job. I think traditionally today, we all go to HR and say, Prabhash, I need to get a sales manager. And you typically kind of say that, hey, my sales manager needs to be good with people. My sales manager needs to be good in planning, sales planning, and numbers driven. And he needs to be a bit of a risk taker. I like him to be that, but he can't be too snobbish or dogmatic. You know, we kind of tell our recruiters that that's what we want. Seriously, I think if you think about it, of course, I think they are fantastic recruiters, right? They can get people like that. But how do you really harness those traits? How do you actually get those behaviors out? Is it really from a CV? Is it really from that whole experience that they have? How do you actually find out that someone possesses those traits? So this is where psychometrics become very, very valuable. There are various tools out there. There are various solutions of psychometrics out there. The difference would be those personality tests and versus actual psychometrics that harnesses out those traits for you. So it is important if you have access to some of those and utilize it to ensure that you're getting the right person in the right job. I mean, the big difference is, this is where it is. Prabhash, I want to be a sales manager because I think I like to sell. But the big difference is, do you have the right trait for the right job? Applied in the same way is similar when you try to promote someone into a managerial post. It's very different. No matter how good Jimmy is in his past 5 years' performance, getting into a managerial post is a whole different capacity. The requirements are very different. You're now talking about leading people, handling conflict, right? Managing strategy, managing plans. It's very different when you're a single contributor. So that's exactly how really analytics becomes very powerful. Are you making the right people decision? Yeah? Prabhash, that's the answer for this question.
Thank you. Thank you. And then the question from Viruli. Thank you, Viruli. So your view on ethics of human capital in the new norm, ethics part in the new norm.
It's always a very difficult space and question to answer. In what we do today, in fact, in today's world of volatility and uncertainties, right? Especially like sectors like the financial sectors, there's a lot of need to measure integrity. There's a lot of need to measure ethics, and it sits in their value chain. It sits in the core values of the organization, and that's what we believe in. There is no tool today, and in all honesty, I think if there's one, I will probably be sitting in a very fantastic position. I'll probably be making a lot of money out of this, and I can go around and say I can measure integrity, ethics for each and every one in your organization. So these are deep set values in our heart, if I could say. These are deep set values in each and every one of us. And the definition of integrity itself, what is it, right? Integrity is not as simple as just taking something from the organization or pilfering or stealing money. It's not about just that. Integrity as your role as a manager. I was just talking to a LinkedIn contact of mine and said, what's integrity all about? It comes down to even integrity of you as a manager. If you're committing to a directive, a focus and action, what's your integrity to ensure that it's followed through? So the vast space, the grayness, that's where it is, right? It is new norm. People like to talk about it. It is kind of sexy, you know, ethics. I like to measure that. I like to measure integrity. Do let me know if someone finds out how we can measure this. I'll be the first to raise my hand to get your solution.
Thank you, Virli, for that great question. So next question, yeah, I don't want to mention the name, but I'll read out the question. I head my HR division, and I do understand the importance and value of these different psychometric tests. However, convincing my managing director to use psychometric test is a tough challenge. He thinks that by talking to a person, he can assess the suitability. So what should be my approach to convince him? Very common question. Yeah, a good question, but again, a very
simple answer to this, you know, bring me over. I'll convince your managing director for you. No, it is tough. I think sometimes in believing on a psychometric solution or assessment tool can be a challenge. And in our world, in Omniview Consulting in Harrison, Malaysia, um, how we convince and showcase someone what he can do for you, and we provide complimentary assessments and we take them through the process. So it is like buying a car, right, Prabhash? How do I actually tell you that this is a great car until unless I allow you to test it? I allow you to drive the car. I allow you to feel the car in different terrains, right? Different times or climate zone. I think it is that convincing that's important. And hence it goes back. Do you convince with enough analytics? Do you convince with enough data? There are fantastic tools and solutions out there for HR. Fantastic. And that's not one that works. And sometimes it's a combination of tools. And I always, and for the person that's asked this question, I'm really glad you've asked it, because it is an important solution to leverage on today in the world of uncertainties, because analytics opens up a whole different world. It provides HR professionals very clear, it provides a clear scientific approach to making decisions with minimal, hopefully errors, right? We're not saying that assessment tools like Harrison Assessment is a crystal ball. It is not a crystal ball, right? It just provides that insights that helps you, that additional lens, with all your other lenses in the organization to make that people decision. All right, yeah?
Thank you. And more questions are coming. So one is, would you please explain the effectiveness of disciplinary actions on employee performance? Dr. Ranatung has asked that. Would you please explain
So
the effectiveness of disciplinary action? Yeah, on employee performance.
the effectiveness of discipline.
Good question.
Wow, that's a tough question too. I mean, it's a question that I think everyone has been wanting to have an answer to. Does disciplinary action brings about better behavior? Does disciplinary action brings about better performance? I take the person back one step. For the person that's delivering the disciplinary action, I think you need to think about what's the intent of this action and what's the objective. If it's merely to punish or to name and shame and to demean someone and or to show you that I'm in a better position, then I think all else fails, right? It completely fails. But if the disciplinary action is taken on with a very positive approach, then you're on the right track. So Prabhash is not about you did this wrong, this is how you should do it. My take is should be, Prabhash, I think that action was decided at that stage. How else can it be different to obtain a different level of outcome? That's the kind of conversation. That's the kind of positive disciplinary action. Of course, if you're talking about disciplinary action, like because someone has broken a rule, someone has taken something that they should not, if there is a policy against something, no, to be as direct as no smoking during work time, of course, then a very specific and clear disciplinary action must be taken. So I think we must distinct that with the difference of performance actions. Right? Okay. So that's my take on it.
Thank you. Yeah. And this is about, you talked about the Harrison's assessments. Was Jayanta, that question came. So is Harrison mainly for recruitment related decision making or any other areas that it can be applied?
Okay.
It's about Harrison's.
Okay, some of you may have heard of Harrison Assessment, some of you may have worked with it. It's similar, like, there are many tools out there, and we're not saying we're the best, and we're not saying that we're the only tool. Absolutely, I myself, I'm certified Hogan. I'm a user of MBTI, DISC, and now Harrison Assessments. Along my journey of exposure to various assessment tools, I think it is the capability of the tool that is most important. Whichever tool I think you intend to use, I think you have to be very clear on what you want to get out of this tool. So I think that's the first step, right? Harrison assessment is an amazing tool for me. It's not because I'm working for them and I use the tool. I've seen how it has really given insights that are mind-blowing at times. It is the simplicity of use, but yet it is the richness that it brings for you, right? It measures 175 traits. It allows the assessments to be applied not just for recruitment, it can be used for succession planning, talent potential assessments. Right now, to some of you are very familiar with the 9-box matrix, my McKinsey. It allows you to even do right to that extent. We use it for competency-based interviews in an assessment center. In fact, right now, what I'm personally involved in is coaching board of directors. I'm using Harrison assessments for coaching and developing board members. So that's the breadth and that's the depth and richness of Harrison assessments. Why I think a lot of times we hear that Harrison assessments is used for recruitment. I think that's always and most important and most crucial part of any people management. There's always an entry point. It's an easy entry, but the fact that Harrison can allow you to customize and create templates that you want to measure against the exact role that you're hiring for, that's the beauty for Harrison. If you have an opportunity to try it, it is pretty amazing. It's mind-blowing that you can tell that Jimmy fits a role better in customer service than better in a human resource role. You can get down to that kind of detail, right? So that's the beauty of Harrison assessments.
Thanks, Jimmy. And adding on to our viewers, adding on to that, like if you want to know more about Harrison's assessments and how it can be used effectively in your workplace, please let us know. You can use the chat box so that we can organize a free session
Absolutely.
for you. So I'm sure that we can do that. So please mention like your need in the chat box below, or you can use our usual email address info@glenmore.lk, so that we can get directly Harrison's experts for that discussion, so that we can organize an exclusive discussion on Harrison's assessments, how it can be used for different purposes and the effectiveness and all of these things about Harrison's. So even we can invite Dr. Shubha Gajula. He's the
Absolutely.
research, he's responsible for the research activities of Harrison's assessment, and because he's a well-known guy for that, and then he holds a PhD in psychology and master's degree both in psychology and education. So
Yeah.
I know because he can explain things very well. Please do let us know, so that
Absolutely.
So
Prabhash, just a quick one. I wanted
yes.
to add to that. I think the question about recruitment, absolutely. I mean, it's used for recruitment. In fact, Dr. Shubhaka himself was working with us in Malaysia and then also in India itself. Harrison assessment is being used, and at that time we had projects with Air Asia Group, and Malaysia, Air Asia India. It's being used to assess their pilot recruitment. So while it's recruitment in its simplest form, but you just imagine the capability of Harrison assessment being used as a very crucial measurement point for people who want or aspire to be a pilot. And we no longer just measure their qualification, their technical capability. It goes right down to measuring things like their stress capability, their level of handling conflict, and their ability to multi-skill and all that. That's the richness of Harrison assessment. So it really extends beyond just a normal standard hiring process we put someone through, right? So that's the confidence we share with our clients, and that's the extent of taking the tool right down to that pathway of someone who's going to fly you in your next journey up on a plane, right?
Yeah. So next question from Amanda and Natasha. Okay, you can, it's optional. Can gamification influence employee engagement? Is so how, and what the negativities of using gamification to enhance employee happiness? Optional, of course.
Okay. I like the question. You're sitting right in a space of employee engagement, and I love that. This is where I think everyone needs to really understand and define engagement. In a very generic approach, most people think of engagement as happiness, and everyone's coming in, walking in, these birds and the bees are chirping, and the sunflowers are everywhere, and it is all about the happiness scale, right? Engagement goes way beyond that. One of the things that Harrison Assessment does is it look at various areas of expectations. We have 8 areas, in fact, very similar. And some of you are familiar with Gallup, and no engagement tool has strayed far from these. It looks at areas of development, expectation, needs of development. It looks at recognition space. It looks at in terms of remuneration space. It looks at in terms of work-life balance, and it looks at your personal space. It looks at the way you expect and work with leaders and how your communication works. Very, very detailed. So engagement is really much more than just happy scale, right? So a big part of it is all about opportunities for growth. A big part of it is opportunities to be challenged. And are we getting the right kind of leaders that's working with me? Do I have opportunities to take initiative and take lead and be empowered for that? So coming back to the question, does gamification help? I'm a believer that all solutions that we put in for people development helps, right? Gamification is another whole level of approach to training people, to developing people. Speed to competence is a quick way, is a very standalone, independent way of training someone rather than putting 10 people in a classroom. You could train someone through just pure gamification. But if you look at that, behind the needs of engagement, gamification is development, is upskilling, is giving people opportunity to learn a new skill. So that's fantastic, isn't it, right? So yes, absolutely is going to impact a very positive way to engagement, especially in the world of Gen Ys and Gen Zs. Maybe for us, the more older ones, maybe it's going to take us a bit of struggle to get into a PSP or something like that. I'm going to struggle with it, right? But definitely, I think gamification is the way to go too. Yeah.
Thank you. And then the other question, most of the psychometric tests and interpretations mostly based on populations taken from the West. So how would you see the applicability or the validity of those in this part of the world, in the Asian region? Because most are based on the database, everything mostly from West. So how do you see the applicability? That's the question that
Okay, I love that question, and results of various studies conducted of the Harrison tool itself is demonstrated that there's no adverse impact across gender, across racial groups, different culture. In fact, in addition, one or two of foundational theories of Harrison is that in the paradox theory, is grounded on Asian philosophy and the ancient Chinese body of knowledge known as the yin and yang, right? So earlier example about analytical and intuitive, the communication paradox like frank and diplomatic. So it's a yin and a yang, right? That's really interesting. And we've used this globally, worldwide, across more than 60 countries. Different countries ranging from the Middle East to European countries, American countries. We've never seen any impact because ultimately one of the points that I always like to talk about Harrison is about what you bring to the value of that organization in your context, in your country. That's all it is, right? We see things quite differently. There are some base things that don't change. So that's where it is. That's the stability of Harrison assessments. There are some benchmarks that's predominantly maybe more skewed in one population, one race, one country, but not for Harrison assessments.
And next one is a very common question, but yeah, I would like to ask that also. Somebody, can people fool the psychometric test? Because sometimes we see like people like if we don't do a behavioral kind of interview, so sometimes people try to fool the interviewer. So likewise, can the psychometric test can be fooled?
Look, we are all HR people. I think we have seen enough tests and assessments and whatever psychometric personality test out there. I think when we get to that point, we know what I think those sections or those tests are looking for. We know what they are trying to measure. A very robust assessment tool, a very credible one, will have built up all its walls and ways of circumventing someone trying to fool it. First thing first, I think this is always what we say, right? I think the intent of taking an assessment needs to be very clear. It is never used as a witch hunt. It's never used to find faults. Harrison assessments and the way we approach it is never about this is your strong points and this is your weak points. These are your great traits and these are your weaknesses or your downfalls, right? Harrison assessment never approaches all its participants or candidates or users in that approach, because every role requires different kind of traits. That's all it is, right? It's about, are you carrying the right set of traits in the right role? So coming back to that, can we fool Harrison assessment as a test itself? I can't speak for many other assessment tools in what's behind the scene. The Harrison Smart Questionnaire contains a built-in reliability indicator, and it detects attempts to manipulate the questionnaire. So we see people trying to maybe outsmart the system. And so the built-in smart questionnaire knows that they are trying to attempt this, right? And the attempts to manipulate the questionnaire will be detected through various ways behind the scene. So we have a reliability score. We have people coming up with incomplete assessment tests and all that. So that's all inbuilt with Harrison assessment. Ultimately, our message is, why do you want to fool yourself? I think the base of all this is, the more you know about you, the more you discover about yourself, you're able to clear the pathway in achieving greater results. So that's the philosophy we go towards the people who take on our assessments.
Okay, thank you. And maybe the last two questions I would take that we have received, Minali. So psychometric tests are sometimes a bit cumbersome. If you want to know somebody's job compatibility, you have to answer one set of questions. If you want to know about the development aspects of the same person, another set of questions, and so on. It's a general question. This involves time and money. Is there any solution for this?
Absolutely. Definitely come to Harrison assessments for sure. Yeah, there are many great tools out there that requires you to take different set of questionnaires at each time when you want to do different measurements, right? Either a measurement for recruitment, or is it a measurement for leadership development, or is it a measurement for engagement? So while it falls under the purview of one brand, there are different tests or assessments you have to sit at different times. With Harrison assessment, is a fantastic tool. It's one-on-one sitting. Each sitting will take you approximately only about 20-25 minutes. It's done in various languages. That's the beauty with Harrison assessment. It's only one sitting. With one sitting, you can do things like your engagement report. You can do things like your job success analysis match. You can even get your development report out of that. You can get your paradoxical graph reports out of that for different purposes, right? So those different reports can be used for different intent. Now, what if along the way, I've done an assessment today, Prabhash, let's say it's 3 months down the road, Prabhash, you said, hey, I need to look at a different report. Now I need to look for talents in my organization. You don't need to resit for an assessment. For those of them who have completed those assessments today, the assessment data is valid for up to 2 years. you're still able to simply go back into the system and select the reports you want against the incumbent. And within a minute, your report is all churned out. That's the ease, that's the simplicity that we provide. That's very unique to Harrison Assessment itself.
Okay, it's like sometimes like we go to a hospital and we give some blood, and then so same blood can be used for different getting different reports. So something like that you're
Perfect.
referring to.
And in fact, that's
All right.
exactly how we view it. Harrison Assessment is your complete blood test. It's not your basic blood test, it's a full-blown blood test. So with that full-blown blood test, you can do your sugar, glucose, your basic high blood pressure, your basic other stuff that you want to check, right down to cholesterol, right down to many other complicated illness that you want to check, right? So that data is valid for X amount of time. So that's the simplicity that we commit to our clients out there.
And the one last question, are these psychometric tests, usually they are expensive, and how do you justify the return on ROI, the return on investment, and is it the right time? So we are in a very challenging time, man. So spending that money versus the
Right.
situation that we are in.
Right. Okay. Harrison Assessment is one of the lesser priced product out there, and I have to say that it's not priced at the top range. I think the question should be, if you're spending, for example, a month just trying to hire 5 candidates to fill one role, and you're going out there to put advertisements, you're going out there to interview, you're spending time in the office looking to 500 CVs, you're spending time calling them to come back, let me see them first, I'm not sure if it's the right candidate. I think that's where the cost needs to be compared, right? Your return on investment in having a recruiter sitting there full-time, 2 weeks, looking for one person in one role and sieving through 300 CVs, what's that cost there? What's that daily or hourly wage versus a report that could be as low as $50 that could zoom down to the right set of candidates that you want within an hour? How much is that savings? I think that's the approach that we need to think about. So this is about looking at technology, right? How much is technology going to be your partner in your day-to-day activities? How can it complement, not take away? I think people are afraid that something like Harrison Assessment is going to take away a recruiter's role. I can tell you it'll never, because you still need that experience of a recruiter to make the final steps happen. But we want the value of that role to be at a strategic end rather than at administrative end, where it's higher cost spent in that, right? We had a client that had to hire 50 people into a specific role for the organization within a month. They had 16,000 interested applicants. So do your math. 1 month, they need to select 50. They had 16,000 interested applicants. How many recruiters would you need to make sure you don't lose any one of those 16,000? It's huge, it's incredible. So that's the beauty of ensuring that. I think the clarity of your strategy needs to be very clear, right? And upright investment brings about 3-fold, 4-fold of cost savings. Okay?
Thank you very much, Jimmy. Really appreciate your time. So I think you have shared a lot of wisdom, your wisdom with our participants. So I'm sure the knowledge you gain is very useful as participants. So hope I'm sure you enjoyed this session. So as I have mentioned, like if you want to know more about Harrison's assessments and its reports and the cost effectiveness, please do let us know, send us a mail, so or send a text. So we will organize a session for you. please send us a mail soon so that we can organize it pretty soon. So Jimmy, thanks again for your time, and it's
Thank
really
you.
wonderful.
Have a
Really
great day in
appreciate
Sri Lanka. Thanks very much. Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
So we will share this video on glenmore.lk/YouTube and Facebook and in LinkedIn for those who want to listen it again and for those who have missed it. So during the next few weeks, we will talk about the industrial relations and labor laws, which is a hot topic. So where we make blunders in our organization. So we will talk about the places where we go wrong sometimes in relation to labor relations and labor laws. It could be recruitment, it could be some other area or industry inquiries and things like that. So for that, you will meet Mr. Obadegele Ilaratna, the former Commissioner of Labor, and he's an honorable member of the Industrial Courts and attorney at law. So this will be in Sinhala and English mix, so that you can get clarified anything in relation to labor related matters. And thereafter, you will get the opportunity to meet Nalaka Heva Madhuma. He will talk about mental process reengineering, a practical guide to develop mental toughness. Nalaka Heva Madhuma on mental process reengineering, a practical guide to developing mental toughness. So we will share these details and the dates in Glenmore Global Resources Facebook page, YouTube, and in LinkedIn. Please get registered. So thank you so much. Thanks for joining with us and have a pleasant day. Stay safe. Thank you.